As we talked about before the show, it's hot and sticky. This is a hot and sticky episode. It's overcast, so it's not sunny, but it's still 88 degrees. And did I mention sticky? Just disgusting.
Yeah, well, I heard that's what I've heard about it. Sunny, hot and sticky.
That's what you heard about sunny?
Sunny, hot and sticky. I heard about your weather. What do you think? You got a dirty mind?
That's what you just said. You said that's what I heard about sunny, hot and sticky.
Sunny, I heard about sunny, hot and sticky. Your weather up there.
What'd you hear about Missy?
Her twisting my words. Wait a minute, Missy.
What?
Missy doesn't have anything to do with the weather.
Oh, of course not.
She would have been a good weather girl, though. Missy Hyatt doing the Tallahassee weather. She could have become the next Diane Sawyer if her life path had taken her in a different way.
What did you think of TBS making Missy Hyatt, or trying to get her to lose her Southern accent? Do you think that was an important thing for a national wrestling company, or was it a waste of everyone's time and an insult to her?
Okay, the thing is, Ted Turner had a Southern accent. The whole idea of the broadcasters she wasn't going to be the next fucking Barbara Walters, okay? She wasn't going to be hosting ABC World News Tonight. She was a personality on a wrestling program, playing, in effect, herself. I mean, like everybody, turned up, or sometimes turned out. Nevertheless, so to make her change any part of herself for that reason, because that way she'd sound more like a national broadcast. No, she's supposed to sound like a gimmick. She was originally kind of a Cornette, a Southern. They alluded to Hyatt that she was a rich heiress. They couldn't come out and say it; they'd get sued. But so a rich Southern bubble-headed blonde that was manipulative and evil and cunning and whatever the fuck. And when they make her a broadcaster, yes, same way that I did, tone down the manager part and concentrate on just being the heel personality part, be an entertaining heel personality. What did that have to do with losing her accent? They were just idiots.
Well, let me take a step back and ask you another thing. She was a really good valet. You know, if you look at the period from 85 to 87, world class with her and John Tatum, and then Hot Stuff and Hyatt International. She had heat. She was good working ringside. She had the Gucci purse. And it was an interesting role because she was the hot girl with heat. You wanted to see her get her ass kicked by Dark Journey or whoever. After the Crockett purchase, once Missy and Eddie, and then Missy on her own, I think, for a little bit, and then they both come back at the end of 88. They never use her. The brief period of time where Crockett still had the company and then Turner, they never once used her as a heel, except like at the very end with the Nasty Boys, and that doesn't count. But they never capitalized on the character she had created that worked so well. I never understood that. They brought her in. Her and Eddie were like baby faces. Remember her walking the Steiner brothers to the ring? She would walk the dog. They would come to the ring. She would hold the dog. I mean, they had nothing for her to do.
Well, I mean, gosh, that may be an essay question, and I'd have to go back and look at notes of her. At various points, they either didn't understand her or Eddie was doing something. If Eddie had heat, she might have heat because, well, if he goes, they may say she go, whatever. But then also, there was an element, I'll answer the last of that first, when she was walking the Steiners, the dog to the ring and et cetera, and blah, blah, blah. It was an early example of what would happen later on to Sunny, in that they're cheering her because she's gorgeous, and we're not really doing anything with her to put any heat on her anyway. So they didn't know how to get heat on pretty girls that people were cheering. There was so few of them. That's why they started making them broadcasters or semi-announcers or whatever the case. To me, if Missy was involved with a top heel in the territory or wherever, then it worked. Because then the top heel would have heat, and she was good at what she did and could get heat when she was hitting people over the head with the Gucci purse and everything. But if Eddie was never the top guy in the WCW structure and had heat at a couple of points in time. He was on the booking committee, but then he was sideways with Flair, blah, blah, blah. If you have Sonny or Missy or anybody like that with a middle card heel, then everybody's looking at her, right? And just cheering her because why the fuck not? It's more exciting than what we got here, the Body Donnas, right? So a lot of people didn't know how to use her. At one point, she was doing different shit with Eddie. And then they want to make her a broadcaster and out of, so we can't go point by point chronologically. I don't have the notes with me, but you are correct. The same thing with Tammy. If you used her with the top heels in Smoky Mountain with focal point being on her and allow her to be herself, she'll get heat with people. But if it's just she's there interviewing people or in the corner of somebody that's not that interesting or not featured or whatever, then, oh, yeah, she's fucking gorgeous.
Imagine if instead of replacing JJ with Hiro Matsuda for that brief period of time, it had been Missy Hyatt.
Woo!
Missy and Ric Flair versus Ricky and Bonnie Steamboat.
Ooh, no. No. Let's cut the second half of that one off at the knees.
Well, Flair turns babyface, May, Wrestle War. So you have a brief period of time where he was a heel managed by Hiro Matsuda because they bought the Four Horsemen from JJ, or JJ left as part of the purchase. I'm not exactly sure how it made sense.
Yeah, we won't go back and, yeah.
What if then, and again, Eddie was in that whole mix because he was the one who was Steamboat's partner when he came back. What if Missy had managed Flair instead of Hiro Matsuda?
That would have been not only more attractive television, but also fucking tremendous. But that's
Could Flair have worked at that point with a female valet? Later on, he had Sherry, but would it have worked in 89, 88?
Well, hold on here a second. Back up. I don't know who to blame. I don't know whether that was an early Jim Herd or an early George Scott. It sounds like an early George Scott because he and Hero obviously would go way back. And as well, George Scott was just getting the memo of, the Japanese buying a bunch of things that had started several years before that and thought, oh, this will be newsworthy. So I can pretty much attribute it to him. And it fucking sucked, and nothing against Hero, but Jesus Christ, it was a bomb and dropped quickly. But Missy would have been great with Flair at that point, much like, think about this. He went a little bit with Nancy.
That's right, later in 89 and into 1990, yeah.
Right, but the Four Horsemen at that time, until Herd vetoed that, the new reform, since we couldn't get Tully and Arn because Herd vetoed that, was going to be Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, and Stan Lane managed by woman. That would have been an attractive combination. Instead,
we got Flair and Arn and Barry and Sid and Ole and Nancy. 6 people for the Four Horsemen.
Yes. And everybody remembers that well-running Swiss watch that was that organization that variously dropped people and then dissolved over time.
But the difference is Nancy, woman, wasn't really active at ringside. And she didn't really, not that she didn't have any heat, but it was a different thing than Missy. Missy could generate heat.
Yeah.
And if her and Flair were both there together, both with the long blonde hair, it was almost the same hairdo. I don't know. And if she was still the 1987 Missy Hyatt,
you know who wouldn't have liked that package?
Beth Flair?
Cleopatra. Beth Flair. Yeah, that's what Flair used to call her, was Cleo.
Why did he call her that?
Cleopatra. She was the queen of the fucking Nile there on the hill in Charlotte, boy. And she wouldn't have liked that pairing at all, I have a feeling. And she had long blonde hair also. It was about the same height as Missy. That could have been a goddamn, boy, talk about the valets in world class.
Well, he had a type, because remember, he married Beth in 83, those photos were in all the wrestling magazines with Rick Steamboat, Roddy Piper, and Jim Crockett as his best men. And then Beth makes that famous appearance at the end of the Starrcade 83, hugging a bloody and crying Ric Flair, a very emotional and wonderful moment for those fans at Greensboro. And then early 84, he goes to New Zealand, and as these articles in the paper, Ric Flair is accompanied by his fiancée, and it's some other woman from Ohio. And then it's like a newspaper ad in Ohio that he's engaged to her. So I don't know what was going on there, but he had a type. He had a certain type, because I have a photo of this woman sitting at ringside next to Leah Maivia.
We won't get into Lincoln, Nebraska, but nevertheless. So anyway, what were we talking? We were talking about the weather.
Hot and sticky.
Hot and sticky. Sometimes the weather, the ill wind blows. Sometimes people blow hot and cold. Sometimes this program blows, but it's your show, so you determine the weather report.